Hey everyone, ready to conquer some ancient history? Virtually, of course.
We're diving into Era, History Untold, the strategy game that's got everyone talking.
Is it the second coming of civilization or a whole new beast?
We've got reviews from PC Games N, IGN, and PC Gamer to dissect, so let's get this campaign rolling.
And what better place to start than with a revolutionary idea?
Simultaneous turns. Now, you might be used to turn-based strategy games where everyone takes turns making their moves.
But Era throws that out the window.
Yeah, no more politely waiting for your friend to finish their turn while they build up a massive army on your border.
This is a constant race to outmaneuver, and let's be honest, probably outstab your opponents.
Imagine trying to plan your next conquest while your opponent is already mobilizing troops towards your borders.
That's the kind of nail-biting tension simultaneous turns bring to Ara.
At least that's what IGN seemed to enjoy most about this system.
Talk about keeping you on your toes.
But PC Games N brought up something even more intense.
Apparently you can just bulldoze entire cities to build a road if you need to.
Talk about ruthless efficiency.
It's all part of the game's focus on strategic depth, where every decision has a consequence.
You're not just zoning for aesthetics. You're thinking about the most efficient way to expand your empire, even if it means sacrificing a village or two.
Of course, there are other ways to interact with your fellow rulers,
But diplomacy might not be Ara's strong suit.
Spill the tea.
Well, IGN noted that while functional diplomacy in Ara isn't as intricate as some of its other systems.
Less wheeling and dealing, more speak softly and carry a big army.
Okay, so maybe less Gandhi, more Genghis Khan.
But hey, if you're gonna conquer the world, might as well do it with style, right?
And speaking of style, PC Gamer was blown away by how gorgeous this game is.
Absolutely, they were raving about the level of detail, saying it's beautifully detailed.
You're not just plopping down buildings, you're designing districts, and each city feels like a living, breathing miniature metropolis.
Okay, I'm sold on the visuals.
That's the kind of detail I love to zoom in on.
But creating such a complex world has to come with some downsides.
What's the catch?
Well, PC Games did mention that the level of micromanagement, especially when it comes to crafting, could be overwhelming for some players.
Crafting.
Okay, so we're not talking your basic chop wood build hut situation, are we?
Not even close.
Think of it more like managing supply chains for an entire civilization.
You're not just gathering resources, you're turning raw materials into finished goods.
Those goods into something even more advanced. It's surprisingly in-depth, as IGN pointed out.
So it's like building a civilization-scale logistics empire.
I can see the appeal, but I also know my limits.
Give me a battlefield over a spreadsheet any day.
But speaking of managing empires, what about the leaders you get to play as?
Any big names in Ara's history books.
Oh, absolutely.
But PC Games N was particularly excited about the inclusion of some lesser-known figures alongside the usual suspects.
Sure, you've got your Cleopatras and your Caesars.
But how about Sappho the poet, or Wilma Mankiller, the first female principal chief of the Cherokee Nation?
Wow, now those are some names you don't see every day in a strategy game.
It's really cool that Era is highlighting these figures who weren't necessarily conquering the world.
It's still shaping it in their own way, though PC Games N did pick up on a slight contradiction there.
While celebrating these diverse figures, the core gameplay of Era still heavily revolves around, well, conquest.
So a bit of a disconnect between celebrating diversity and the main way you actually play the game.
Interesting food for thought.
But let's circle back to the overall experience.
PC Gamer called it a pretty picture book rather than a deep tome.
And knowing them, that could be either praise or shade.
It's a little bit of both, honestly.
They were impressed by how accessible and visually stunning Ara is.
Especially the intuitive UI.
But they also felt it might lack some of the depth found in other grand strategy games.
At least in its current state.
So a gorgeous and engaging game,
but maybe missing some of that long-term complexity.
which seems to track with what IGN experienced.
They were hooked at first, but felt it got a bit repetitive later on.
Exactly.
They felt diplomacy, while present, could have been more nuanced.
And the combat, while visually impressive, lacked tactical depth.
Okay, so we've got stunning graphics, a solid foundation,
But maybe some room for improvement in terms of long-term engagement and depth.
but ultimately, is Ara worth adding to your empire of games?
Well, that's where our three reviewers had some pretty interesting differences of opinion.
PC Games N, completely won over by the fresh take, and the addictive gameplay gave it a resounding thumbs up.
Wow, a glowing endorsement.
But IGN wasn't quite as smitten, right? So we've got one enthusiastic thumbs up, but IGN wasn't quite as smitten, right?
Yeah, they landed somewhere in the cautiously optimistic camp.
They enjoyed their time with Aura, don't get me wrong.
But they felt like it didn't quite reach its full potential, especially in the later stages.
They were left wanting a bit more depth to really sink their teeth into.
So one vote for Instant Classic and one for needs more time in the oven. What about PC Gamer?
Where did they land on the empire building spectrum?
They see Ara as a strong contender with potential for greatness.
Especially with some strategic expansions down the line.
They appreciated the streamlined mechanics and the focus on the core gameplay loop.
But also acknowledge there are areas like diplomacy and religion that could be fleshed out further.
Okay, so it sounds like the jury's still out on whether Ara will be remembered alongside the titans of the genre.
But it definitely seems like a captivating experience with the potential to become something truly special.
Exactly.
It's a beautiful game with a solid foundation and some really innovative ideas.
It's not afraid to shake things up and try something new.
Which, let's be honest, is what makes playing any new strategy game so exciting.
Will you play it safe and stick to the tried and true path to victory?
Or forge your own destiny, even if it means breaking a few rules along the way.
I guess in Era, that's part of the fun of rewriting history.
And that's what's so fascinating about a game like this.
It's not just about conquering territory, it's about making choices and seeing how they play out on a grand scale.
Well, on that note, I think it's time for us to wrap up this deep dive.
You've heard the expert opinions, you've got a sense of the game's strengths and weaknesses.
Now it's up to you to decide.
Will you lead your civilization to glory in Era, history untold?
The choice, as always, is yours.
And the history books are waiting to be written.
Until next time, happy gaming.